Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you for our webinar on mobile test automation challenges and the open source solutions out there. Once again, we would like to thank you for joining in today. We will be presenting an interactive session covering the tool demonstrations as well as going ahead with your question and answers in today's demonstration. Right before we begin, I would like to give you a quick introduction about the presenters. My name is Premal, and I look after customer relationship and advocacy at Cygnet Infotech. Along with me, I would have Dakshesh, who's our test manager and a mobile expert. Moving further to today's agenda, we would like to begin with the challenges involved in testing mobile applications. We have all talked about developing them, we have all talked about using them, but so far we have not had a chance to talk about how to deliver quality mobile applications. Our agenda in today's presentation is to cover the challenges involved in delivering a quality application. What are the activities or what are the strategies that we could implement to automate the testing life cycle. Followed up by that, we would be covering a live demonstration of the open source tools available out there, especially MonkeyTalk and Selenium, which is on our agenda today. We would be giving you a quick highlight of these tools just to give you a flavor of what is in the box and how they could be used, what kind of setup do you need in your mobile lab, and how inexpensively are these tools available to provide you the highest ROI on your automation implementations. We would also be talking about a few best practices to be carried forward ahead that you could use in your mobile strategy, followed up by a Q&A session. We would also be providing a free proof of concept and consultation after this webinar for all the attendees to write back to us and to be able to solve their doubts, queries, as well as any issues that they are facing in implementing mobile automation tools. So that is all from me now. I would be allowing Dakshesh to talk on the challenges involved in mobile application testing, and he would be your host and presenter for today. Thanks, everyone.
Hello everyone, myself Dakshesh Shah. I'm the test manager at Cygnet Infotech. Today basically what we want to talk about is everything related to mobile application testing. Initially we want to get started on the challenges involved in mobile application testing. Now for people who are familiar with mobile application testing, or even for the people who are just getting started on mobile application testing, if you just look around yourself and find out different devices that people use, or the different OSs or the operating systems that people use as part of their devices, you would come across a lot of different challenges once you start thinking in terms of mobile application testing. So what would be those challenges? The first thing we notice is the number of operating system platforms or the number of devices that people use. If you just look at Android market, there are almost about 200 to 300 devices out there that use Android as an operating system. So that just gives you an idea of the kind of diversity we have in mobile application platform. The other thing we need to consider is the carrier networks. When you look globally, in different parts of the world, people are using different carrier networks based on different technologies like GSM technology, CDMA technology based on different speeds like 2G data network or 3G connection, even in some cases LTE or 4G connection. So we have to account for all these challenges. We come across all these challenges when we talk about mobile application testing, and we have to account for that while doing our mobile application testing. Other thing that when we want to talk about mobile applications, the first thing that comes to our mind is that going to be a native application or is it going to be a web application? Both of them have its own advantages and disadvantages, but our testing strategy would depend on if it's a native application. It would differ a little because native applications are directly installed on the devices, and based on the operating system or based on the platform, the code base may change slightly for the same application when it gets installed on iOS or it gets installed on Android platform. So you have to account for all this. We have to consider this as a challenge when developing our testing strategy for mobile application. On the other side of it, different applications may come up with different functionality, including just phone call functionality, or there may be a gaming application that we are talking about, or just for the browsing purpose, business purpose, or communication, just kind of a messenger application. So when you're talking about different functionalities may include different challenges. Like for communication, you have to make sure that even for across different networks, we are able to communicate properly. So we have to account for all these challenges when we are talking about mobile application. I won't say last, but the user experience part is one of the most important aspects of mobile application testing, and that includes installation, usability in terms of the same application being used across different devices, connectivity, as I mentioned. People may be using it on a 2G connection network or 3G connection network, even for that matter on LTE connection. And so we have to make sure that the challenge is all the users should have a similar user experience, even though they are using the same application using different connectivity. So these are some of the challenges that we may come across. If you just look at this particular diagram, it just gives you an idea of different devices or hardware or platforms people come across on their day-to-day life, and it gives you a brief overview of what are the complexities involved in testing a mobile application. Okay, other challenges we can talk about is the integration with existing system. There is a possibility, let's talk about a business related application. If we are talking about banking domain related application, we have to make sure our application gets integrated properly with the existing system, and it is able to communicate properly with the existing system, and user doesn't have any issues with the existing system when he's using either a mobile application or a web-based application on a PC or a laptop. So we have to account for this as well. One of the other important aspects is, in today's market, the development time has been reducing based on the market requirements. So as and when the development time is reduced, testing also will be affected at the same time. So we have to account for this, and we have to make sure that we are able to finish our testing within the given time frame. So, but that doesn't mean that we have to lose the quality of, or we just allow the quality of the product to just degrade over the period of time. For that matter, we have to take into account the performance and security of the application, because these are some of the important aspects of developing a mobile application. Because if the performance is not up to the mark, or the security of the application is not good, other user can access your personal data, and that may be sensitive information that you may be sharing with unwanted people. So you have to keep that thing into account as well. Last thing but not the least is the backward compatibility. Let's assume that we are developing an application for Android 4.2, which is the latest Android operating system. But we also have to account for people who are using older versions of Android application. If they want to use this application, at least a couple of versions that are older than the current version, we should be able to support them. And these are the challenges that we need to consider when we are talking about mobile application testing. So in a nutshell, we've talked about a lot of challenges that we come across while testing the mobile application. But how do we overcome all these challenges? One of the things that we could talk about is the test automation, and a lot of people talk about it. But how do we use it effectively? It's expensive. So what could we do to implement a proper automation strategy, or think about how to automate certain scenarios as part of our testing. One of the first things that we could do is develop an automation framework which is very useful across multiple platforms, which would be stable based on the application. Like if you are developing an application based on iOS, and if your application framework, automation framework is stable, you should be able to use the same framework when you port over your application to an Android device, and you won't have to make a lot of changes to your test scripts, and that will be, your test scripts will be ready to be tested within a limited amount of time. So that is the first thing that we need to come up with when talking about our automation strategy, which is stable automation framework. On the other side of it, when we start developing any mobile application, there is a possibility that everything may not be in the place, or there is a possibility that the application may not be able to, we may not be able to use the application directly on a real device. So at that point of time, whenever we want to test the functionality of the application, we can use the emulators so that we'll be able to do a lot of UI as well as functionality related testing and make sure that our application is stable before testing the same thing on a real device, because that is a must thing that we need to do before going to market. So that is the third point that I want to talk about. The use of the real device as and when our application stabilizes, and before going to the market, we have to make sure that we are testing our application on the real devices so that it will give us the real-time usage of the application and give us a proper feedback related to testing. Okay, we've talked about automation framework, but how do we automate this, or how do we implement this? The first thing that we need to do is define the automation scope. Based on the functionality, there is a possibility that we may have to account for changing requirements based on market situations. So, but at least the critical functionality of the application would remain the same. So at least that part we could automate. So that in that scenario, we have to just come up with an automation scope that remains stable for a reasonable amount of time, and then we could start automating those scenarios. Before doing that though, we have to select the test automation tool, and while selecting the test automation tool, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is, okay, what is the outreach of our application? How many platforms are we going to support as part of, or how many applications we are going to deploy our application on? And at the same time, does that automation tool support different platforms that we are going to support? So that is one of the important aspects to consider while choosing the test automation tool for our mobile application testing. Once we decide on a particular tool, what we could do is start out by automating a simple script that we could utilize for smoke testing, because that would help us reduce our time in making sure that as and when smoke testing passes, we should be able to move on to further testing of the application. And if it fails, we can directly let the other people know that there is some issue going on with the application and we will not be able to move forward with our testing. Once we move on from the smoke testing phase, what we could do is, as and when we are testing the functionality of the application, we can gradually build on our regression testing suite that would include the business critical functionality of the application. As I mentioned earlier, whenever we are defining the automation scope of our application, these are the things that we need to keep in mind, that we always have to account for the stable part of our application as well as the business critical use cases that will be utilized again and again as part of our testing lifecycle. So these are some of the things that we could do while implementing our automation strategy for testing our mobile applications. Once you want to go through, these are some of the tools that are available in the market when you talk about mobile application testing in terms of automation. Some of the open source tools that are available are MonkeyTalk, which is one of the very useful tools available in the market. Other one is Selenium. The other available tool is Robotium, which supports Android-based mobile applications. On the other side, when you gradually stabilize the test scripts that you're going to use, and whenever you feel like now we are ready to move on to the commercial phase of commercial tools, which would provide us some more functionality as and when we have some more testing to be done. We could think about QTP or Silk Mobile. For iOS, there is a test studio available in the market. On the right side, if you take a look at it, these are some of the companies that provide services related to emulators or simulators, and they also provide the usage of real devices based on our requirements. Specifically, Device Anywhere and Perfecto Mobile providing the service across the globe based on different carrier networks that based on our requirement, they will be able to provide us services that would simulate the usage of the application across different parts of the world. And C-Test from Experitest would just gives a simulated experience of the mobile application testing tool, and they are one of the new players in the market. So this is just to give you a brief idea about the tools that are available in the market. Just keep in mind that as mobile application testing domain is growing, all these tools are also growing, and they keep on adding different functionality that we could utilize as and when we want to start actually using mobile test automation tools. Moving forward, now we come into an interesting part of our presentation, live demo of open source tool. Let's talk about MonkeyTalk, and I'll just give you a brief introduction about what MonkeyTalk is. MonkeyTalk is basically an open source mobile test automation tool that supports both iOS and Android platforms as of right now. And this is, if you look at the screen, this is the setup that it utilizes to run the test scripts on mobile emulators. Other thing I just want to mention before going forward is MonkeyTalk can also be used for automating the same test scripts on the real devices. So instead of executing your test scripts on an emulator, if you have connected your actual real devices to your laptop or the machine where you are executing your test scripts, it will run the same scenario on the real device with the same kind of functionality that you would see on the emulator. And for executing or when you want to do any automation related to MonkeyTalk, what you need is basically an IDE that can be integrated with the Android SDK. Currently we are talking about Android-based application, and what it will do is it will call the APK file, application APK file. It will be installed on the Android emulator, and from the MonkeyTalk will directly get connected to Android emulator and run the script. Just after this brief introduction, I'll just show you a quick demo of MonkeyTalk. Just hold on for a second. Okay. For people who are familiar with Eclipse or Android SDK, it gives you an option if you want to select or if you want to create virtual devices based on different Android versions that are available. So this is what it is, and I'll start MonkeyTalk IDE. For MonkeyTalk, what we are going to utilize is there is a native application that we will install on the Android emulator and see how the functionality works, how the test script, how we are able to execute MonkeyTalk test script on Android emulator. Okay, one of my test script is already open, and what I'll do is I'll select that particular application and I'll let it run. So what I will do is I'll start Android emulator and then install this application on Android emulator. After that, script execution. Sometimes the Android emulator takes a little while to get loaded. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, as the mobile application technology is developing, all these open source tools are also developing. They provide some of the functionality that are most can be used across most of the applications, but as I mentioned, all of these tools are evolving. So there may be certain things that are not being supported as part of these tools right now. But keeping in mind these are the open source tools, it would be easier to implement all this test automation tools across, I mean, any organization when we want to finalize or we want to utilize the functionality that is available as part of the tool, and it will at least give us some idea of what is available in the market as well as what functionality can be automated, what cannot be. Okay, now the application has been installed, and what this application does is it does different calculations based on the formula that has been built into the backend of this application, and just gives you the information that you need. So what we'll do is we'll get started on running this particular script. I've already developed this script, so wanted to give you some idea about how the scripts are being executed on Android Emulator. Before doing that, I'll just establish a connection with Android Emulator. Now my connection is set to Android Emulator, and I'll start the script execution. Once you, okay, if you just are following the screen, that we are able to select the value from the drop down, provide a value in the text box, and the calculations are being done accordingly. Okay, if you look at MonkeyTalk log screen, it says the completed script playback okay. And if you just look at the last lines of the script, what it tries to do is it's verifying certain information. So the last line is we are trying to verify it. I hope everybody is able to see my screen. I think we are experiencing a technical issue because I have a second screen available with me, and that doesn't show the screen that is being displayed on my machine. Just give me a brief second. Okay, I hope everybody is able to see my screen now, because okay, there was some disturbance in our network connection, so that because of that you're not able to see the screen. But what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and execute this script again, so that it for people who may have missed are able to see that part again. Okay, so I'll just go ahead with executing the same script again. Now you can see that it's selecting different values and providing input into the text box, and it's doing some calculation in the back end. Okay, as I talked about, this is the log information that is being generated. At the end of this log, people can see that it's completed, script playback is okay. And at the end of our script, what we are trying to do is verify that the proper information is being displayed. So the last value of 21.4 40% is being displayed, which you can verify on the screen of the application. So this is how we could do. This is a brief introduction about executing the script. Now what I could do is, there are different ways of using MonkeyTalk. If you know all the different components and monkey ID of the application. A monkey ID is basically an object ID for your application and different actions. So in that case, you can just write the script manually. The other thing you could do is, there is a record and playback functionality available. So that is what I'm going to use. This is the empty script that I've created, and we'll start recording. I've just clicked on the record button, and I'll just go on to calculations, company information, but nothing is being recorded. Just give me 1 second. I would restart MonkeyTalk, because that happens sometimes, that MonkeyTalk is not able to follow. It may have been due to the connectivity issue that we are experiencing. I'll just start MonkeyTalk again. Okay, so now it has started, and I'll just establish the connection to Emulator again. Now the connection is established, and let's give it a try again of recording the script. Click on recording button, and okay, now it's happening properly. So we'll just go through the company information, and as you can see on the side, different steps are being added to my script. I'll change the registration value to 10% and provide the capital of 100,000. And you can see that the value is being, some calculation is happening here, and that's how it's being recorded here. So I'll just go ahead, stop the recording, and play back the same script again. Before doing that, I'll just close this part of the application, because that is where that is how the script was recorded. Okay. Okay. Now you can see the script is running on its own again. Okay. The script execution is done. Playback is okay. So we are successful with record and playback mode as well. There are a lot of people, if you just look at this particular screen, that we are providing the static values, but there may be certain people who may want to parameterize this information and use different sets of data to do data-driven testing. How do we do that? I'll just show you the script I already created for that. So what you need to do is, just before recording your script, this is the line you just need to add, where you define your variable. There are 3 different variables that I'm defining: amount, rate, and payment, and then utilizing those values in my script. The other thing that we need to consider while coming up with data-driven test is, before going through that, I'll just show you different values as part of my CSV file. Okay, there are different sets of values for amount, rate, and at the end of the calculation we will be verifying that the payment information is proper. Okay, so what I was saying is, once you have a data-driven test, one additional thing that we need to do is create a separate script that will call our data-driven test. So what you need to do is component a script and provide the monkey ID, that is the script ID that we developed earlier, and the action would be run with the CSV file where we have different set of data. So we are just going to go ahead with executing this script. If you just start following the screen, the amount, payment term, all these things may be changing on in each iteration. And that's where we can say that we are successful using the data-driven testing for using MonkeyTalk. All right, when we go back here, it says the script playback is okay. So now we are able to run our script successfully. So this script would be considered as a test suite, and what we could do is we can keep on adding different scripts as part of this particular script, so that we can run multiple test scripts as part of our test suite. So this script would become the test suite, and you can keep on adding the number of test scripts in here, and that way you'll be able to run multiple scripts simultaneously, one by one actually. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I'll just show you brief. Okay, monkey ID would be the already used script that we will use. This time around, we are not going to use run with, because we do not have any particular argument. So we are just going to say run and let the script run again from scratch. Okay, so what it's doing is, if you just take a look at the MonkeyTalk screen, it's executing the first script right now. Once it's done with that, using different set of values, it will move on to the second script, which is demo test script. Okay, there is some issue that it's not able to find the value of down payment. But this is how you can run your test suite completely, including multiple test scripts. So this is all what I had to talk about related to MonkeyTalk. Now we'll move on to Selenium, because Selenium also does some good work related to test automation.
Right. So as Lakshesh prepares for going ahead with Selenium, and he showcases how he has set up the Selenium labs, I'm going to talk about some of the general benefits of both the tools. I mean, both MonkeyTalk as well as Selenium is usable, and any script that you have created for MonkeyTalk or Selenium can be used either on an emulator or on an actual device. But after you have connected the device using the device data cable or through the USB cable to your computer where you have both these tools installed. So it provides a high amount of reusability for your test automation scripts, which could be played either on an emulator as well as on a actual live device. For people out there who are testing applications which require carrier connectivity as well as a location-based service for testing these devices, would come back and say, hey, emulators are something that we could not use. So don't fret. You can also use the same scripts on um, an actual device and test from various locations. You can also ship the scripts to your counterparts in various geographies where they can download these open source tools, install them out, and go ahead and start testing from as easy as importing the script and attaching the device and getting it ready. So that's in general the benefit of these open source options that we are going to discuss today. Moving on to Selenium, I would rather keep you holding. I would give allow Dakshesh to take you guys through the Selenium piece of today's presentation. So
Okay, Selenium for mobile, it also supports both iOS and Android as of right now, specifically for mobile applications. And the setup looks similar to what we saw above for MonkeyTalk, but in this case, you can directly develop your test script in the IDE of your choice, which can be directly. The IDE has to be able to integrate directly with Android SDK. That's the only requirement, and you can use any particular IDE in that matter, and you can develop your script in that particular IDE. In our case, we are developing our application in Java. So that application, our test script would directly call the WebDriver, and the WebDriver will directly talk to Android emulator to perform certain actions. Now let's move on to that piece of code. Okay. Now I just would like to just give you a brief overview of my test script, actual test script, which is written in Java, to show that we are actually using WebDriver. If you go through the code, we are calling the WebDriver, and a WebDriver to perform all the actions that is defined as part of our test script. So that is, before doing that, I'll just start my emulator this time around. And till the time this particular emulator is launching, we also want to talk about other open source automation tool that is available, which is Robotium. That is also one of the nice tools that supports Android based applications as of right now. And the good thing about that tool is it has a functionality for Robotium remote control, which you can utilize in a test lab setup if you have real devices connected to your in a test lab setup. You can call this different devices, or you can perform number of different test scripts on different devices directly from Robotium. So that is a nice functionality that is being provided by Robotium, and that we could utilize in the real-time scenario as well. So what in this script, what we are trying to achieve is we are trying to automate a web-based application, and in this case we'll be using Facebook. We'll open the Facebook page, we'll log into Facebook, we'll search for a friend, and then we'll go to his profile page. That's what we are covering here as part of this script. Okay, let's get started on executing the script. You can also see some logging information being generated on Eclipse page, which gives you some idea about what is happening currently. This script execution takes a little while, but the good thing is once you start here it goes. Once you start it, it will automatically run, so you have multiple scripts defined, then you can let it run all by itself, and you come back, just take a look at the results, and we are good to go.
So while we are at it, Dakshish, I mean, I would like to understand, does the script work at the UI level, or does it work on the actual UI layer, or is it something that works at the backend, just accessing the code and the functionalities from there? When you say functional testing, does it also do a bit of your UI coverage and also allows you to test the UI?
It achieves both the targets. It does the UI testing as well as functionality testing. How it works is it works similarly to all the other test automation tools in such a way that it tries to identify the object and perform the action on that object based on how it's being defined in the test script. So that is it's similar. So for people who have some automation knowledge would be able to figure out, okay, here is my object and here is my action. These are the arguments that I need to pass. So it's very similar in that way.
So does it mean that it has its own object repository, it stores all the objects inside?
Similar to QTP, it doesn't store the object anywhere. Objects will be directly called when it will be identified based on the web page that we are accessing, and it will perform the action on those objects. Now you see that the friend request is being searched and his profile page will be opened. This page is being loaded, and that's the end of our script. Now, yes, on the right hand side you would see that the green message is being displayed. That means test run has finished successfully. So that's what I have for mobile application testing using Selenium. That is a demo for Selenium. Now we will move back to our presentation, and we want to talk more about, as I've already talked about Robotium. There is some good feature available as part of Robotium, which is in the future it may start supporting other platforms as well. So that is one thing to keep in mind as I keep on mentioning that these tools are growing. So it will be able to add certain other functionalities in the future as well.
Thanks, Dakshish. So we are moving ahead with best practices to implement and the tips and tricks to carry forward from today's session, as well as some things that you need to keep in mind when you decide or when you start planning your automation. So looking at the options, you need to start testing early, and as often as possible. Um, we already talked that there are a variety of automation tools out there. Open source being most favorable, provides a early startup at a very less cost, and helps you in achieving a high ROI because your investments are also low at this time. You can do a filtering. The best thing is to do is planning. All these automation tools are as good as your plan and your test strategy that you have placed. Once again, these are just tools. So as it's equally important that how good you are at planning on their usage, how good are you at implementing this for your applications, for your web-based web apps or your native apps. So it's important to create a matrix of platforms that you're considering, including the versions that you have. Consider that each version is a different challenge and it has its own requirement to test. You can plan a smoke test on different versions. Compared to iOS, Android has much more versions out there, so you might want to keep them. Also, one of the things to keep in mind is that not all the versions are available in the market. If you talk about Android 1.6 or iOS 3.5, or for that matter BlackBerry version 4.5, there are not many users out there in the market. So plan ahead, think about what you're developing on, and think about what what your application is going to cover, and test on those versions. Devices, there are phones, there are tablets, and then there are phablets. So we all talked about phablets, and though funny, they are now taking up a majority of the market share. So do plan on what devices you plan to test. Talk about their create a matrix about the processes that they are using, the versions that they come loaded with, and also plan on what additional screen resolutions you would be needing, as well as what upgrades might come for these devices. Like majority of the devices provides free upgrades. All Google Nexus devices gets free upgrades at least for the next 6 to 8 months for all versions. Talk about network connections: 3G, 4G, LTE, Wi-Fi. You want to test here. You want to also test about what carriers. Sorry, you can talk about GSM. You can talk about CDMA. Also different frequencies. Don't forget to test your application for performance and security, which is one of the most important best practices that you need to keep in mind. Mobile devices have a huge amount of chance to be compromised on security. Also, performance for your application might be different from an OS. I've typically experienced people who are using an older version of device with an updated OS, something like an iPhone 3GS running OS 5 and above, has a lot of performance issues, and your applications might not work. Same goes for low-end devices, which Android has a big chunk of it. So you might want to talk about how your application is going to support and how quickly is it going to perform. We have also seen some applications not performing well, though they are chart topping. We're not going to talk and name them, but they also fail to run smoothly on your latest devices like iPhone 5 or Galaxy S3 for that matter. Keep your target audience in mind while testing. It's very important to do a user profiling. It helps a lot, and you can always use Google out, talk to groups that what kind of users your application is. You can also do a crowdsourcing. There are a variety of crowdsourcing options out there. Mob for Hire or UTest can be one of the good options for talking to some users, or simply email them or connect through them through Facebook, launch a campaign, etc. Make them a part of your test strategy. It's useful. Tool selection. As I mentioned, a tool is as good as you can plan. So take into account how it supports an emulator, how it supports a real device, and what all platforms does it support. MonkeyTalk presently does not support Windows Phone, so you might have to look at some other options. You can talk or look at an external partner. You can talk with a person or who has experience on testing those applications, or look at some other options. But MonkeyTalk or Selenium does cover a majority of the market share out there. So Android and iOS, if that is something which is a must for you, then you should be talking about, you should be going ahead and starting to use one of these tools out there. So these are um, just some good advices and best practices that we would like to share with all the audience today. Moving further to our next session, which is question and answer, we would be happy to hear out from you. What questions do you have, and make it interactive for you guys. You can write to us on info@cygnetinfotech.com. You can also get a free consultation and a proof of concept done for your mobile app. What automation tools are compatible, what scripts you could use, and what coverage you can achieve is part of something that our team would be happy to help you out. We also do, we also can provide additional help. You can just write to us and we'll be happy to connect back with you. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining. If you have any questions, please feel free to email it to us on info@cygnetinfotech.com. We would be glad to pick them up and reply back to you with all the questions, or simply discuss your needs related to mobile testing. You can also leave comments, as well as you can also share your feedback on info@cygnetinfotech.com. We also have a page where you can, on our webinar section, you can leave your comments there. It would really help us, as well as share any concerns or any things that you would like to see in the next demonstration. In recording, stop broadcast.